This is an introduction to eBird class. It is designed for somebody who has either really never used eBird before or who has tried to use it and gotten confused or frustrated and didn't really know what they were doing. So hopefully we'll be able to get you through some of the basic functions of eBird and get you a little bit more comfortable with it so that you'll be able to use it in the future. That's the intent of this class. And as I said in the registration materials, ideally it's best if you're watching this on a computer or a tablet and you have your phone handy with the app on it, because we are going to try some exercises. And I do have a way to mirror my phone screen to the computer. So hopefully I can actually show you what to click on as we go through this and maybe make that a little more clear. So fingers crossed all the technology works the way that it's supposed to. All right, for those that do not know me, I'm Jane Patterson. I'm the president and the education chairperson for the Baton Rouge Audubon Society. I teach birding classes in Baton Rouge and in Ponchatoula, and I've been doing several classes online this last year and before, actually. My email address is cjanebird@gmail.com. And if you ever have a question about a bird or birding or anything related to birding, you can always email me. It's always fine. So we're going to get started here. This is going to be a wild ride. So we are not going to be able to cover everything about eBird, but we are going to cover a lot. It's going to feel like a lot of information. And as I said, please make note of your questions. You can either put them in the chat or hold them until the end and we'll go over questions. And you can refer back to something in my PowerPoint, or there may be something that I forgot to cover that you have a question about. So eBird is a database that was created by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, who's one of the premier birding organizations in the world in upstate New York. And it was designed to hold bird sightings from around the world. So as birders were going out and looking at birds, they were recording what they were seeing, and somebody got the brilliant idea to put all this data into a central repository and to start collecting it. And it's blossomed from there. I think it first started about 2006 and it's just gone gangbusters. It's now used worldwide. So it is a logging tool. So it's a tool for putting in your bird sightings, but it's also, given the fact that so many birders across the world have been putting in their bird sightings, it's now a tool for us to use to see what has been seen around the world. So to really use that data. And Cornell has also started using that data for different applications, which we'll see. So there are both a website, and they're both a web version and a smartphone app versions of eBird. And the two are different. So the app is used for recording your information when you're out in the field looking at birds. The website is great for looking at reports and statistics and generally exploring that data. You can put your bird sightings in through the website. That would require that you're keeping everything on paper, and then you sit down in front of your computer and enter it all. Most of us these days use our app for the data entry, but you can use the website for data entry as well. So my rule of thumb is generally the eBird app is for putting data in, and the website is for getting data out. And we'll see that Cornell has now used this wonderful database to create some incredibly powerful tools. So when you go to the website, exploring is the place that you probably want to start because you can use this to study the different bird species, figure out where you want to go birding in Louisiana or really anywhere in the world. You can also use it to figure out when a bird is supposed to show up here or someplace else. And one general rule that I want you to keep in mind is that anything in blue, any text that is in blue in eBird is a link. So when you click on it, it will take you to some more information about whatever it is that's linked. So let's go to the website and I'll show you the home page. So somebody give me a thumbs up. Let me make sure everybody can see that. All right, good. So this is the web page. They change out this, this photo every week or so. But at the top we have submit. So this is where if you had kept a list on paper and you wanted to submit your sightings on into eBird, you would use submit here on the website. Explore is what we're going to talk about first. My eBird is all of your personal eBird information, given that you have an account and you're signed in. And I see that I need to sign in here because I'm not signed in. And then science, these are some of the applications that I was talking about. So let me go ahead and sign in.
Excuse me, are you showing your screen? We can only see you. We don't see your computer screen or the eBird screen. Okay.
We can see the computer screen.
We can see, I can see it now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shani. Thank you, Deborah. All right, so we're back. I'm logged in now. We're gonna go, let me go back to my PowerPoint just a second and make sure what I'm getting myself on track. So we're gonna start with Explore Species. And under Explore, if you go to Explore Species, you can put in any species name. And basically this is like a field guide that pulls from the eBird repository, showing you photographs of the bird that you're interested in. These are our eBird user photographs, so not professional photographs. And then like a field guide, it shows you general information about the bird. It also shows you a range map to show you where the bird is found in the world. And then it gives you some specific observations. So it says that I've put in 162 roseate spoonbills with only 4 photos. I'm slacking there. And eBird has 307,000 sightings recorded of the roseate spoonbill. So under weekly bar chart, if we put in a region here, and I'll put in the whole state of Louisiana, this shows us when this bird is expected to be seen throughout the state of Louisiana. So these are the months, January, February, March, etc. And the thickness of the squares or rectangles here shows you how likely the bird is to be found in Louisiana. So you can see there's a higher density, a higher rate of observations of the roseate spoonbill in the warmer months, fewer in the cooler months. And then the map, so the map shows this density as well. The darker purple indicates the areas that where the birds are more often seen. And then if you scroll down, you can see more pictures by different users. We have some videos, etc. So this is a real nice way, if you have a question about a particular species, doing Explore Species is a good way to use eBird. It's good for studying pictures of different birds. So one of the really cool applications that Cornell has developed now that they have all of this data within eBird is this animated abundance maps. So I'm going to click on this. This is under the science link in eBird. And we have the animated abundance map. I'm going to change this to, let's do the painted bunting because everybody loves those. So what this is showing us, we have a map here and you see a big play button in the middle. So up in the upper right-hand corner, we have the relative abundance showing that the more yellow colors indicate lower abundance. The darker purple colors indicate higher abundance. And then again, we have the weeks of the year, January through December. So basically what this is showing you is where the birds are in January, because we're here in January, and that the abundance is fairly low. And I'm going to click on play here. And what it's going to show you is where these birds are throughout the year. So there's March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So you can see that this is a migratory species that returns to the United States in April, May, and June. And then the numbers taper off. And then in the wintertime, they're mostly in Mexico and the northern part of Central America. So this is really fascinating. Now, one of the questions that you might ask as you're looking at this map, so you see everything is purple right here. So you have very high density of painted buntings in Texas, Oklahoma, parts of Louisiana in June and July in the summertime when they're breeding. But then you go on into other parts of the year and you don't see any purple. And so one might ask, particularly, let's say here in October, back up just a little bit. The numbers are fairly light everywhere. And so you might say, well, what happened to all the painted buntings? If there were so many of them in June and July, what happened to them in October? So remember that eBird is a function of the data points that have been entered by birders. So this is not necessarily a reflection on how many birds there are, as it is a reflection of how many birders there are that are looking for these birds in Mexico and throughout their fall and winter range. So the numbers just aren't there, and that's why the map looks this way. But the more birders there are, the more data points there will be, and the better information we will have. So this is really, really critical for understanding the movement of these birds throughout their yearly history.
Dear passenger, we are experiencing.
All right, let me go back to, let me show another bird real quickly because I want to make a point about conservation and how this, how these maps are used. So let's use the prothonotary warbler, which is one of our abundant summer breeders. And we can see that in the wintertime, the prothonotary warblers are generally here in the northern part of South America. So if I click play here, we can see that again, they start arriving in April on the coast and in Louisiana and states around us. And then throughout the summer, you can see where they're living. And then in the fall, they're going through Central America and ending up in Northern South America for the winter. So basically what this is showing is from the data that's presented, basically the entire North American population of prothonotary warblers is going to this area of South America, and they are going through Central America to get there. So from a conservation perspective, not only is it really important that we conserve and protect these areas in North America where they breed, but it is equally as important that we protect the areas that they're using to migrate as well as their wintering grounds, because all of those are important for their life history. If they don't survive the winter, they're not going to come back and breed next year. So from a conservation perspective, this is really important for scientists to be able to show policymakers, for example, this is why we need to protect these forests, because without them, these birds will not survive. So this is just one really cool application of the data that's been culled over the last 15 or so years in eBird. So what they are developing are these trend maps, and we'll see these in hopefully in the next year or so. And basically what we'll see there is how the populations have changed over time. So you think of the bald eagle, for example, that was nearly extirpated from the lower 48 states in the 1970s, but whose numbers have rebounded considerably in the last 50 years. So not only will we be able to see where these birds are during the year, but we'll also be able to see maps that show that recovery over time. And that will be a really interesting thing. So something to spend some time with.
Jane?
Yes.
Does Cornell do any census data? I mean, you're saying this is a reflection of birders in a way, but is there any indication of the populations?
So eBird has started incorporating bird censuses like the Christmas bird count,
right?
Breeding bird surveys, but a lot of that is historical data, and it is very likely that it has not all been incorporated or imported into eBird yet, which is probably one of the reasons that those trends are not yet complete, because that's a huge project to get all of that, to acquire all of that data and get it input.
But the volume is very important as well, isn't it?
Yes.
To go with the movement of the birds.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go mute again.
Yeah. So one of the things that you can do with eBird is figure out where you should go birding. And again, this is under the explore function. So let's go back to eBird and do some exploring and see what people are seeing. So we'll do explore, and I'll put in East Baton Rouge Parish just for grins and giggles, since I know lots of you that are on this call are in East Baton Rouge. So I just put in explore East Baton Rouge, and what this is showing me is all of the species that have been reported to eBird in East Baton Rouge Parish, the number of checklists, which is quite a number. And the reason for these very high numbers, if you compare this to other parishes throughout the state, is because we have a lot of birders in East Baton Rouge Parish, especially with LSU there and the ornithology students. So they're doing quite a lot of eBird reporting. So you can see all of the sightings, and remember, everything that is blue is a link. So if we look over here in recent visits, we can see the people that have eBirded recently. If we click on something, we'll pick on Deborah since I know she's on this call. We can click on her list and we can see where Deborah birded. So this was in her subdivision, 5:06 p.m. today. These are the birds that she reported. So if you're trying to figure out where to go birding, this is one of the things that you can use. There's also a map view of this. So if you click over on the map, it shows you all of the places around Baton Rouge that you can go birding. And eBird uses the term hotspots when it refers to places that you can go. A hotspot does not necessarily indicate a fantastic place to go birding. Basically, it is an opportunity to go birding. And you can use a map like this to see which of these spots are actually hot and which are really not. So the warmer the pin, the more birds that have been recorded there. Here we have the LSU campus, 202 species, 667 checklists for all years, all months. And then we have one, this is a Breck Park, Breck Old Hammond Highway Park, which is a small park, mostly with swing sets, that has has only been only has 24 checklists and 62 species. So again, it's a function of the fact that they're just haven't this is a location that hasn't been visited as much by birders. But this is a really neat way to figure out where you might want to go birding. You can find the places that a lot of birders have visited over the years, and you can see all of the birds that they've seen there. And you can zoom, you can narrow this down. So if you want to get more specific, you can say, well, what are people seeing? Not only so let's see what people are seeing right now. What are people seeing in August? And that changes the texture of the map considerably because there are not a lot of people birding in August. It's hot out there. But you can see that there are some, and you can explore these. If you click on any of these points, you'll be shown all of the species that have been seen, how many checklists, and if you view the details, you can even see who's been birding there and what they have seen. So really interesting way to explore what's going on around you. If you're trying to figure out where to go birding, this can be a really valuable tool. All right, I think I've covered all of this. So again, you're just exploring places. You can pick any parish, any state, any country, and you can zoom in as granularly as you want. And you can zoom all the way down to checklists to see what's been seen recently or over all time. And again, a hotspot is not necessarily a great place to bird. They are defined, usually they're public spaces, and that will likely be used by more than one birder over time. So when the database was created for Louisiana, they basically included all of the parks in and around Baton Rouge, all of the wildlife management areas, the national wildlife refuges, you know, kind of all the public spaces. But there are others like the Mississippi River levee by the LSU Vet School is a hot spot. And that's not even a thing. You know, it's not a named location, but it's a place that birders visit regularly, especially after storms, because they can often find storm-blown birds that are coming up the Mississippi River or traveling back down the Mississippi River toward the coast. So it's become a hot spot over time. So the opposite of hotspot then would be a private or a personal location, and that would be like your yard or your company's property, something that's off limits to other birders. And you can indicate that when you bird that it is a private location. So let's, before we go there, let's let me go back up and we'll look at a hotspot in Baton Rouge just to see. So let's go back to explore. We'll do explore hotspots. We're going to zoom into East Baton Rouge. And again, we see this map. And we can zoom in even further. And we can see, and I mentioned the Mississippi River levee at LSU, and there it is right there. So 206 species. And then you click on details and you can see all of the sightings that have been reported to eBird over time. So you can do this for any hotspot in eBird. All right. So as I mentioned, you can use the website to submit data. So if you are one that prefers to use pencil and paper when you're out birding, you can write things down and keep track of it that way. And then you come back and sit down in front of your computer and enter your list there. Basically, the information that you're going to need is the species, the count for each species, the date and time, where you birded, the location, and then the type of count. Were you traveling? Was it a stationary within 100 feet, et cetera? And then how many of you were together looking for birds? So if you have all that information, you can submit your information online. You do want to remember that as you use eBird, you are creating real scientific data. So it is important to be as accurate as possible. There is a tutorial in addition to this class. There is an eBird tutorial that you probably want to take to learn about how to enter data. It may cover points that I'm not going to touch on here. And do know that all the lists that are submitted are reviewed by a team of reviewers. Now, these are volunteers. There are 9 reviewers in the state of Louisiana, and their interest is the accuracy of the data. So if they question your list or something about your list, your sighting, just remember that their focus is on the integrity of the data. They are not trying to humiliate you or embarrass you. So you cannot take it personally if you are questioned. And we'll talk more about this as we go along, about how to ensure that your list is as accurate as possible. And to a new birder, this can be intimidating to be questioned, but honestly, it's one of the best ways to learn. And I'll talk about how the reviewers decide what to ask as we go. So I mentioned My eBird. So this is another tab in ebird.org. And because it is a statistical database, it keeps all the statistics about your birding experiences that you could ever want. So if we go back to the web page here, and we'll click on My eBird, and this is my personal account. You can see that I have 621 species observed in eBird. This is not my life list because I have several international lists that I have never bothered to enter into eBird. Shame on me. So this is mostly my North American birds. And then you can see all the statistics about my different lists, etc. So in Louisiana this year, or so overall time, I have 345 species with 1,522 checklists. I'm pretty good about putting photos on different species. And then here we show eBirding over time. 2021, I'm at 263 species for Louisiana so far this year as compared to the last 2 years. So I've been doing really well this year up until July and August when I've kind of slacked off. But and then it shows in August, I've basically done very little compared especially to last year. I was up at 119, but this August I've been busy with other things and haven't done much birding. And then it shows you all your different county or parish lists for the state. When I first moved to Tangipahoa Parish 5 years ago, somebody else was #1 in the parish. So I made it my mission to bump him off, and I have now accomplished that. And I'm now #1 in the parish. And I guess what that shows is that some of these statistics can give you incentive to get out and go birding. You know, if you looked at this and if I was maybe at 220 this year instead of 226 last year, it might give me an incentive to get out and get that number up. And in the process, I'm entering lists, which is for the better of all of eBird. So it just gives you some drive, if you will. So that is My eBird. All right. So that is pretty much what I want to cover on the website tonight. And now we're going to go into the app. And as I said, the website you will probably use mostly to do those explore functions. The app is used for logging your bird sightings.
Jane, before you leave the website, this is Terry. Where is that tutorial? You said we should do the tutorial. Where is that?
So, hang on, let me find the right key here.
Okay, so it's on the main page.
I think so. I'm looking.
Maybe under help getting started with eBird?
I looked under there, I didn't see it. That's why I asked.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Our free eBird Essentials course. First, reduce password.
Is it like a YouTube video, or is it?
No, it's here on the website. It's here on the website.
It says new to eBird. Welcome. Start by taking our free eBird Essentials course.
Yeah. So that's probably it, Terry.
Okay. Okay. Free eBird is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Renee, too. All right. All right, so when using the app, you do need to turn location services on your phone. And this is because it is using the location of the phone to determine the proper list to use for eBird. So if you do not turn location services on, I don't know what it does lately. When I have done it before, it tried to include a list of thousands of birds, basically. I don't know if it used all 10,000 in the world or not, but basically without any location information, it includes a very large list of birds, and you don't want to include birds on your list that you're never going to encounter in that location. So with location services on, it'll pare that down to just the birds most likely to be seen in your area. And you will want to install a bird pack. As we discovered recently, these are now done by state. So you will need to remember as you move from state to state, if you live in Louisiana but go visit your family in California and want a bird out in California, you'll need to install the bird pack for California in order to get the proper list for California to use eBird out there.
Where do you find that?
So installing the bird pack?
Yeah.
Just a second.
And where do you find the location services?
Under your settings.
So you're not prompted for that. You have to go to settings.
Correct.
When you first install it, it asks you if you want to use location services, and it gives you the option for all the time or only when using the app. And I selected for it to use it only when I was using the app.
We probably did too.
I probably did too, yeah. I'm not seeing.
Okay, so where to find the packs? When you start eBird on your phone, can you see my phone screen there?
Yeah, that's what I got.
All right, you click on more and on packs up at the top, and it's going to show all of the packs that you have installed. So if you need to install a new one, you click on search, and then you would add that one.
Say that again, because I've got the screen you had at first where it says start checklist. Where did you go from there?
I clicked on more in the lower right-hand corner, the three dots.
Got you. I see it. Got it.
And then packs up at the top.
Yeah, got it.
All right. All right. And it'll tell you, it's a little bit frustrating. I don't know why it keeps doing that. If you forget, you go to California and you go to use eBird and you start it up and it'll say, oh, you need a California bird pack. And as long as you have pretty good cell reception, you're going to be able to install it right on the fly and be fine. It's when you don't have really good cell reception that it's frustrating because you can't get the pack to download properly. So that can be frustrating. If you already have the pack installed for the proper region and you don't have good cell service, you can still do it, but you need the pack installed first. So it's kind of something you need to remember before you get out in the field. All right, we're going to do some, we're going to try some things, and I'm going to just show you some ins and outs and how to use the app. So when you're entering species, you have some choices about how to find the birds on the list. You can just scroll down using your finger, scroll down to the name, which is pretty inefficient. You can use an abbreviation, so part of the bird's name, like use CARD for cardinal, and it's going to display all the birds with those letters in the name, and then you can pick the one that you want. Or you can use the 4-letter code for the bird. And generally the code for the bird is the first 2 letters of the first name and the first 2 letters of the last name. So for painted bunting, for example, it would be PABU, the PA from the first word and the BU from the second word. If the first word is hyphenated, you use the first characters of both words. So a red-bellied woodpecker, RB, and then the first 2 characters of the second word, which is WO, RBWO. And if you get confused about it, you can always start typing, typing out the name of the bird, and it'll find it for you. But we're going to try some exercises using each of these search methods. So when you start the app, it's going to automatically fill in the date and time. So let me go back to my phone here.
How do you get back to it?
Yeah, how do you get to the main page, the home page?
You click on submit.
Okay.
In the lower left-hand corner, right here. Let's see if I can move this over.
Click on submit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now you're ready to submit. And if your location services are turned on, then it's going to have the date. It's going to have your start time. And it's going to automatically want to record the track. And so this is basically making it easy for you to determine the distance that you're going to travel when you're birding. You don't have to use this. You can turn it off. But if you're doing a traveling list, then you will have to estimate how far you have walked at the end, which is sometimes more difficult to do. So it is suggested that you keep that on. And it's suggested that you keep that on and let it record the track. Do know, however, that it is, basically using the GPS function of your phone. So it does use considerable battery. Just like when you're in the car and you're using GPS on your phone, it does wear down, it does use the battery more than if you're not using GPS. So that's just an FYI. But it's going to keep a running count of the time and the distance traveled as you go birding. And this, let's see. All right, let's click on Start Checklist here, just so I can show you the next screen. And so this is where the species show up. And Gigi, I think it was your question about where the bird pack shows up. This is where the bird names show up.
Okay.
So, and what you'll notice up at the top, basically it has chosen the likely species based on 125 checklists in a 60 by 60 kilometer area. So basically what it's done is it's narrowed down the more likely species that I'm going to encounter based on the eBird lists that have gone before me. And that's just a way for it to include the most pertinent birds. Now, you could encounter something that is not on this list, which is fine, and you'll be able to enter it. But it just gives you a place to start. Notice too that the time counter is incrementing, and the distance is here. At the bottom, so down here, you'll see this symbol, which is a sort symbol. And if you click on it, it gives you a choice of how to sort this list. You can sort it by smart sort or taxonomic sort. And what that means, a smart sort will give you all of the birds that you're most likely to encounter at the top. And then there's a line, and then you see birds that are infrequent, and it has the orange half circle symbol behind them.
Oh, okay.
If you keep sorting or scrolling, then you go down to unreported or non-species taxa. And so basically what it's done then is it's not only included all the birds you're most likely to encounter, but it's put all the really common ones at the top. And the alternative is to put it in pure taxonomic order, which is the same way that they would be listed in a field guide. And it's entirely up to you. And you can see that your infrequents and your unreported birds, your rarer birds, are then listed in the middle of all the others. So it's really up to you as to which way you like to sort it. I'm going to leave it on smart sort right now, just because.
I'm going to do smart sort too, see what that does.
All right. So we're going to enter this bird. This is a barred owl. So I want you to use this specific way to enter this, this name. So at the top where it says the pound sign, the hashtag, species name / code, I want you to type 1 space BAOW. And what that will do is that's using the code, the first letters of the first word, the first 2 letters of the first word, first 2 letters of the second word. It brings up all the birds on that list that meet that criteria, which is the barred owl and the barn owl. And then if you just hit search there, hit enter, or I'm sorry, tap on barred owl, then it will add 1 barred owl to your list.
Oh, wow.
So that is how you add a bird to your list using the code, the 4-letter code.
Okay.
Everybody follow along there?
First 2 letters of the first name and the last name, first 2 letters. Okay.
All right. Now we're going to try it a different way. So in this case, we're going to try an abbreviation. So you're going to put in, sorry, I covered it up. You're going to put in 1 space, let me show you, 1 space WOODP, like you're typing out woodpecker. Because you know this is a woodpecker. 1 space WOODP, and it's going to only list the things that have woodpecker in the name. You know this one is a red-bellied woodpecker, so you just tap that, and it adds 1 red-bellied woodpecker to your list.
It's a red-bellied or red-headed?
Red-bellied.
Red-bellied.
Select. That's what you selected.
How do you get that to go away from the, like when I click, I'll get the red-bellied woodpecker, but then the one wood P is still in my search bar. How do I just hit cancel then?
Search.
Or you hit search. Is that what you do? You hit search?
I just I just, I typed one space WOODP.
Right.
And then I just touched the word red bellied.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And it incremented it. And it took away, it erased my one space WOODP at the top.
Yeah, mine's not erasing. That's the thing.
Is anybody else finding that to be true?
Touch it again just to make sure you touched it right. Is it bold?
Yeah, it's bold. So I hit cancel and I'm coming back and I've got my list. So I don't know. Oh, you know what? I got like this check mark and I looked on the check. I clicked on that and it shows my two species now. The red-bellied and the woodpecker. So.
Right, but it still should. So mine doesn't erase when I click on search. It does not erase. Mm-hmm. It does not erase until I click on the actual name.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're doing that. So you're clicking right here on the name. When you type W.
Oh, you know what? I'm clicking on the plus sign. Maybe that's why I'm not clicking on the word itself. I'm clicking on the plus. You see the plus sign?
Yes, that's right. You want to click on the word itself.
That might be why. That might be why. I'm gonna try another one just for practice.
Yeah. If you click just on the plus sign, it's going to increment. You see how I'm touching it and the number's going up? So I can add more red-bellied woodpeckers by just touching the number. Or I can add a downy woodpecker by just touching the one. A pileated woodpecker by touching the one.
That was it, Jane. When I touched I put in Anhinga just as a practice. And when I touched the word Anhinga rather than just that plus sign, it went away. So that's what I was doing wrong.
So if I remember correctly, Jane, you said that would apply only for that particular area of sighting. If later on you saw another one, you'd have to re-enter?
Actually, no. And we're gonna do that in an exercise in just a minute, Larry.
Okay. So I remembered wrong.
All right. So in this one, we're going to use the scroll method instead. So this is a white ibis. And so for this one, you're going to have to just scroll all the way down until you see white ibis.
Okay.
So what that requires too is that you have to know where white ibis is on the list. And the reason that I'm having you do this is to show you how inefficient this is. Because now you're having, especially if you have it in smart sort order, you're not sure exactly where white ibis is going to show up on this list. And so you'll be scrolling up and down. So if you're out birding, you want to be looking at birds as much as possible and at your phone as little as possible.
Right.
It's just a tool for keeping track of the birds that you're seeing. Okay, so you want to make it as efficient as possible. So I really don't recommend using the scroll method for trying to find bird names. Use an abbreviation, use part of the bird name, use the code to get to the bird more quickly instead of just scrolling, because it's just very time consuming.
Jane, can this list be alphabetized?
No. Okay. Your choices are either smart sort or taxonomic sort.
Oh, taxonomic. Okay.
So,
and the taxonomy sort is the way, like I said, is the way that they're listed in a field guide. So for experienced birders, we kind of have that in our head of where it's going to fall in that list.
Yeah.
But for a new birder, you're not familiar with that taxonomic order yet. And you're going to do a lot of flipping up and down looking for bird names.
So I found where, like how I did that practice of the Anhinga, that was just a practice. I know I'm not going to see Anhingas here at my block, but so I found where I could change the number. I put it to 0, but is there a place where you can you don't want to take Anhinga off the list, but you don't want the 0 to show up either. Is there a way? Okay. Is there a place to do that? Like say you think like,
yes.
oh, that was a great egret, and then you realize, no, that wasn't a great egret. That was a cattle egret or something like that.
Yes. So if you, let's say I'll put in one anhinga and then I said, oh, wait, I didn't really have an anhinga. I want to remove that. What you would do is click on the name and it brings up this screen for that particular species.
Uh-huh.
And then you just remove, just X out, backspace over your number.
Oh, okay. Okay. So don't put a 0, just X it out. Gotcha.
X it out, yes.
Gotcha.
eBird does not like zeros.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it looked. It looked weird seeing the 0 anhinga, so I figured they had to be a way to.
Yeah, and it has something to do with their statistical calculations as to what a 0 means, but they really don't like you to use zeros. So one other thing I wanted to show you is, so if I wanted to enter this white ibis, if I click on the name white ibis and it comes up to this screen, notice that I have Merlin over here. So I also have the Merlin app installed, which is also a Cornell app. And I can click on Merlin in the white ibis entry, and it pops me over to Merlin to see the Merlin entry for the white ibis. So it's like popping you right over into a field guide. So if you want to confirm that this is indeed your bird, yes, this is a good match. And that's a great way to do it. And then when you're finished, you can close Merlin, and you on an iPhone, because I have eBird running, I can click up here on this blue oval and it will take me right back to eBird. So that's an easy way to get from eBird to Merlin and back again.
Oh, okay.
All right.
That Merlin is good because I just clicked on it and it shows you the juvenile and the adolescent and the mature, which is really neat.
Exactly. Very helpful. All right, so for this one, we're going to enter multiple birds and instead of just one. So in this case, we're going to do, you have a choice. You can either do 4 MODO, M-O, the first 2 letters of each word, M-O-D-O. You can enter 4 M-O-U-R, in other words, start writing out the name of this bird. You can either put 4 doves, and then you can select mourning doves from the resulting list. So whatever way you want to do it, go ahead and add those 4 mourning doves to your list. And I'm going to do 4 MODO. Everybody have that?
Yep.
All right. All right. So in this exercise, we're going to put a comment on a species. So you can put comments on your checklist as a whole, but you can also put comments on an individual species. So for example, you notice a red-winged blackbird at your feeders and you've never seen one at your feeder before. And you just want to make a note of that. This is something unusual that you want to make a note of. So we're going to add the red-winged blackbird to our list by typing 1 space RWBL, 1 space RWBL, 1 red-winged blackbird. And then we're going to touch the name red-winged blackbird, and it brings up the details screen for the red-winged blackbird. And then under details, we're going to type our note. So I'm going to say, don't usually see these at the feeder.
I'm doing something wrong.
So, and when you do this, if people are looking at your list on eBird, they will be able to see your comments. So this is really useful, especially when you have an unusual bird. All right.
Screen, okay.
Okay.
All right, so yes, question?
Let's say in the details, let's say you type it incorrectly. Are you able to just go ahead and change it? Like, let's say you misspelled feeder.
Yeah, just backspace. Just type it over.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So one thing I want you to notice, if you look at your list now that you've created, at the bottom, you have a new entry. So when we started the list, we only had these two symbols. We didn't have the green check with the blue circle. And so what that's doing is indicating how many species you have tallied so far. And if you click on it, click on that number, it compresses the list down to show you just the birds that you have tallied so far.
Okay.
So you can click back and forth and turn that on and turn it off.
Wow.
So I usually leave this on so that when I'm birding, I can see if I've accounted for something yet. So a quick glance at this list would tell me that I haven't added any cardinals yet. And I might say, oh, I've been seeing cardinals and I forgot to add them. So then I could just go to the top and add in my cardinals that I forgot to add.
Can you guys mute your mic if you're not asking a question, please?
Yes.
All right, everybody see that? All right, so I'm going to ask somebody, get a volunteer here. How would you enter this bird on your list? What would you type?
1 space CACH.
1 space CACH is exactly right. It's not the only way to do it, but it is a way to do it. 1 CACH. You could also do 1 space CHIC for chickadee. So that's another way to do it. You could be inefficient and scroll up and down, but we know we don't want to do that. So CACH or start typing the name of the bird is the easiest way to do it. Thank you, Renee. All right, incrementing the number. So we are still working on our list here, and we see a second red-bellied woodpecker. So to add that second red-bellied woodpecker, we'd add it the same way that we added the first. We do 1 space red-bellied woodpecker, RBWO, and hit enter. And it's going to increment. Now you see I'm at 10 red-bellied woodpeckers because I was playing with that earlier. If you had only added 1 when you did this, then you will now have 2.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Fix that.
And will the GPS function relocate this?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Peter.
When you've seen 2 red-bellied woodpeckers, is because you have the GPS function switched on, will it record it as a second sighting at a different location?
Well, what it's doing now is you are entering a traveling list, presumably. So if it's a stationary list, it will put them both at the same GPS location. So in this case, since we're sitting still, it's going to be both at the same location.
Yeah, I understand that.
If you're moving, it's going to record a track.
Yeah.
And it will not put each bird at a specific location on that track. You'll basically get one list for that entire track.
Ah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
As long as it's one, instance of birding. You don't want to combine. eBird does not like you to cover more than 5 miles on one list. So you'd want to break that up into multiple lists. If you were driving, for example, and birding from your car, that what they really like you to do is to start a new list
after destination.
after every 5 miles or at each destination, yes.
Okay,
and not
you.
combined destinations.
And I think also, isn't it also if it's a change of habitat type?
Ideally, yes.
Okay.
All right. All right, so you see a bird and you are not sure what it is. You see this bird at your feeder. You think it's probably a warbler given the shape and size and everything else, so you're just not sure which one. You can put non-specific entries on your list in some cases. Warblers are notoriously hard to tell apart, and so it does have a way for you to put in one warbler SPA. And the SPA stands for species. It basically is just a placeholder to say that you've seen one type of warbler, you're not sure what it is. In a perfect world, what you would do is take a picture of your unspecified warbler and you'd go back home and you'd look it up and you'd figure it out. And then when you do figure it out, you would go into eBird and you would update it and change the name to yellow-rumped warbler, which is what this one is. But it gives you a way to put in non-specific birds if you're just not sure when you're out birding.
Well, excuse me, Jane, but is there like a, where is the Merlin bird ID? This is when I would need it. And I didn't see it in that little page you had there. But this is what I would want to do. I recognize it's a warbler, but I want to look it up on my Merlin bird ID.
So because it's not a specific species, you're not going to be able to get to, I don't know what Merlin would go in that case. Yeah, so it's not going to be able to pop over to a species because you didn't put a species in the first place. So okay. In that case, you would just have to go to Merlin and look at all the warblers and see if you could figure it out. I mean, it would
okay.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit more complicated. If you started guessing, then you could go to Merlin and see if you were right. But otherwise, you just have to you know, go to Merlin separately and use the explore function in Merlin to try to figure that out.
Does Merlin talk to eBird?
It does.
So when you identify a bird in Merlin that you didn't know in the first place, can you automatically enter that into the list in bird ID?
It will allow you to add it to your eBird database.
Right.
It will not add it to your list in progress.
No, okay.
Oh, okay.
So in this case, it assumes you're starting in eBird and going over to Merlin to look something up. It's not that you're starting in Merlin and then creating a list from that.
Thank you.
It's kind of a one way. Not all families have this SPA capability. So you kind of have to play with it to see which ones do. Basically, the ones that are more notorious for being non-specific or hard to identify will have the SPA option. But one thing that is available, there's an option for a slash. So there's some birds that are notoriously hard to tell apart, and but you know something, okay? Rather than just knowing that it's a warbler, for example, in this case, you see these dark ibis flying. You know that there's only two options for a dark ibis. There's a white face and a glossy ibis. And you also know that both of them can occur in Louisiana. So for this one, you would put in, we'll do one space ibis, and there's all your choices for ibis. In this case, we're not sure if it's a glossy or a white face because we just can't see enough definition to determine. So we would put this as a one glossy / white faced ibis. This does show up as a a non-species taxa on our list because we're not identifying it down to the species name, but it's still, you know, the best we can do. And then counting. So sometimes you might be out birding and you see a very large group of birds and you get flummoxed as to how in the world you are going to account for all of these birds. And I'm going to tell you that we want you to do your best. So when you were in elementary school, they taught you to estimate, and basically you look at the entire field, you kind of figure out how many are in a particular group. So we might say that this is 100 birds. And then you take that same rough size of a shape that you've made and say, okay, if that's 100, that's 200, that's 300. We'll say that this group is 400 birds. And that's the number that we would put in. Is it going to be 100% accurate? No, it's not. Is it okay? Absolutely. And what you would want to do is when you do this kind of estimation, put in the comments how you arrived at that number. If you sat there and you counted one by one, say that. If instead you estimated and you counted by tens, or you counted by 20s, or you counted by hundreds, just say that. Obviously, this is even more difficult if all the birds are moving, especially if they're moving to and from an area, but you want to do your best. The most important thing about counting is that it's a function of relative abundance. So for statistical reporting, 1 is significantly different from 20, but 19 is not. So 19 is approximately 20. 1 is not approximately 20. So you want to come up with a number that is reasonable and use that. If all else fails, instead of a number, you can actually put an X if all you want to do is record the species. So let's look at that. I do, let's say, those were snow geese. So I'm going to put in snow goose. Those are actually rare. We're not going to talk about rare birds right now, but just for illustration, I'm going to put snow goose, and I'm just going to put in an X. So it's going to show up on my list with an X. And what this says is that I saw a snow goose. I saw at least one snow goose when I was out birding. Now, if this is what I saw, this many snow geese, you can tell that it doesn't give any true indication at all of how many birds I saw. It doesn't give any indication to anybody that's coming behind me if I saw one snow goose or I saw 10,000 snow geese, which is the reason that it's always better to put a number if you can, because that is more meaningful. And you want to do your best. Again, put in the comments how you arrived at the number that you came up with. And if somebody else is there with you, y'all can discuss it and come up with a number that both of you agree to and use that number. And that's the best way to do it. All right, flagged sightings. So there's several different reasons that a sighting might be flagged in eBird. And basically a flag means there's something unusual or unexpected about the sighting that you've entered. So the reviewers in any given area set filters based on what is expected in the parish. So they're using the historical data and what they know about birds to create a filter for each parish. So when your sighting is flagged, it just means it didn't fall into that filtered range. It's an anomaly according to the filter. It doesn't mean that you've made a mistake or that you should change your data. If you saw the bird that if you're pretty sure about your sighting, then you want to enter it that way. Don't back off just because your sighting is flagged. For example, when I moved to Tangipahoa Parish, many of my sightings were flagged because there aren't a lot of birders in Tangipahoa Parish. And so there were birds that were unreported, like a turkey vulture, which is entirely expected in Louisiana 12 months out of the year, but there hadn't been a lot of historical reports of turkey vultures in Tangipahoa Parish. And so when I would report them, it would say that they were unreported. So over time, the eBird reviewer realized that they needed to change the filter so that they would no longer be flagged. But that's how that works. So you have a couple of different ways that a sighting can be flagged. For example, if we were to, on our list today, we have lots of Mississippi kites outside right now. All of the babies have pretty much hatched, and they're out fending for themselves and flying over overhead, eating cicadas and dragonflies, and they're starting to gather into what we call kettles in preparation for migration. So it's entirely possible that you might see a group of Mississippi kites this time of year. If you were to put in, we'll say 4 Mississippi kites, that would be perfectly reasonable, and it does not get flagged. But if you see a group of what you estimate to be 100 Mississippi kites, and you put that in, it's going to turn yellow, and it's going to have this exclamation point next to it. If we click on it and see what it's indicating here is that the number that is observed is unusual. And in that case, you would want to add details about this observation. You want to say you saw a large group moving south, counted by tens. And that just gives the reviewer something to go on so that they know how you arrived at that number.
Is that a real picture?
It is.
That's gorgeous. That's Mississippi kites? You saw that many in a kettle?
That's not my picture.
Oh, okay.
That is actually that's a Cornell picture. That's from All About Birds. But there are some places in the fall where they count hundreds of thousands of hawks in a single day.
Right. But I was just curious if that was Mississippi kites doing that.
Well, it was on the Mississippi Kite All About Birds field guide. So I'm assuming I now got it right.
That's awesome.
All right. So if you do get flagged for a high count for a particular species, put in a note about how you arrived at that count. It's best not to change your number unless you're really unsure. If you were estimating and it was really a wild guess, you might want to back off. But if you're pretty confident about your number, then just leave it and put a note about how you counted. All right, another case might be that something is flagged as infrequent. So again, if we go to our list and we put in 2 American robins, they show up actually in mine, they show up as, let me pick a different bird because those show up in Tangipahoa Parish. American robins are actually unusual this time of year. So let me find one. So white-winged doves. White-winged doves are infrequent for Tangipahoa Parish. So I'm going to put in a couple of those. So basically you can see here, infrequent, all of these symbols, this orange half circle indicates a bird that has been infrequently reported for this date and this location. You don't have to put comments. They are encouraged but not required for the infrequent category. And then we get into the unreported category. And those would be the ones that, we scroll down a little farther, those would be the ones that have not been reported at that date, at that location. So it's not completely crazy because they are birds that are seen in Louisiana, like the hooded merganser, for example. We do have them in Louisiana. They're very common in the Capitol Lakes in the summertime, but the 19th of August is really early to see a hooded merganser. So if we were to report these, it would be flagged with a red dot. And so in that case, you would want to put a comment with specific information about this sighting. Just so that, again, that somebody who's coming behind you understands that you are certain about what you saw, and you're recognizing that it's an unusual thing. And then a truly rare bird. So if we were to put in a black-poll warbler on August 19 in Louisiana, one black-poll, let's see, BLWA, black-poll warbler. It shows up on our list highlighted in yellow with an R over to the right. Anything that is flagged as rare must be commented upon. You will not be able to submit your list until you put something in the description. And the information that you should put in the description is why you think you saw this particular species, why do you think it's this bird and not a different bird, and then where you saw it, what it was doing, all that kind of information. And if you have photos or video, this is very good. So you could just put, for your comment, you could just put that I have photos, and just don't forget to add those photos. You have to add the photos from the website version of eBird. You cannot add them via the phone app. So you will have to remember to go log into the website to add the photos later. But it's still good to put other comments about why you think it was this bird as opposed to a different one. So rare birds do require documentation. So, and the most important things is that flag sightings are not bad. If your sighting is bad, especially as a new birder, you want to use it as a cue to double check yourself. So these filters, they've been created over time with lots and lots of data behind them. And if you report something that doesn't fall into those filters, it's going to get flagged. But if you're sure about what you saw, go for it, especially if you're birding in an area that is not birded very often. Like I said, in Tangipahoa, I had lots of flag sightings when I first started. So paying attention to these flags ultimately is going to make you a better birder, because it'll make you be critical and question yourself and really figure out what you're looking at. So they're not a bad thing. So when you finish your list, you get to the end and you're ready to submit. Now we are not going to submit our list today, just for your information. Please don't anybody submit a list with a black-poll warbler on it, because I will get a hard time from the reviewers if 25 people all submit a black-poll warbler this evening. So I'm going to show you how to delete the list and not submit it, but we're going to pretend until we get to that point. So when you finish your walk, your bird walk, and you're ready to end the recording, then what you want to do is click on stop. Let me go back over here. I'm going to click on stop track, and then it's going to show you the final screen. So the first thing that you have to do is choose a location. You always want to choose a hot spot that is close by if you were birding at that hot spot. The very first thing that's going to come up is the actual GPS location of where you are. You very seldom want to use that. You would want to use, in my case, I'm here at my house, so I usually use Ponchatoula My Home, which is what I've entered all my bird lists at my house. Or I can put Ponchatoula the town, which is actually a hotspot. You can see how the hotspots are listed with the colored pins there. There should be yeah, here's another one, the Ponchatoula Kiwanis Park. So you always want to use a hotspot if possible, if that's where you were birding. And the reason for that is that, again, so when people come behind you and they do exploring hotspots, they can find your list and see the birds that were seen there, as opposed to the private locations are not going to be visible. So
if these are all in my backyard, they're not really interested in this. We're creating this list for the general public, so we don't want to necessarily record the hummingbirds that come to my feeders.
Well, but you want to. Okay, so I do my list all the time, but I put it in as a private location, Ponchatoula My Home, so that I can keep track of all the lists that I've seen, all the birds that I've seen in my yard. Okay, and there are ways, if there's something that unusual that shows up, there are ways for people to see that, unless I've hidden the list from the public. Okay, but my house is not a hotspot. It's not going to show up on any hotspot list. When people are exploring hotspots, they're not going to see my house.
Jane, I have a question, again, related to the home situation. How many times do you count the bird that comes to a feeder?
So if you are birding in your yard and you are birding for a period of time and you want to count the birds that you're seeing, the rule for that, so that is a stationary count because you're moving less than 100 feet when you're creating that list, and you would record the highest number of a species that you see at any one time. So if you sit there for an hour and you see cardinals coming and going and coming and going and coming and going and coming and going, you're not going to put 150 cardinals on your list. You're gonna look and see how many cardinals you saw at the same time, simultaneously. 3 cardinals, 4 cardinals, 5 cardinals, and that's the number you would use.
And if you see like 2 adults and 2 juveniles at the same time, then you'd put 4, but would you also make sure that you saw 2 juveniles? Would that be separate?
You would put 4. If you can tell them apart and know that they are distinct individuals, you would definitely count them. So for cardinals, it's easy for male and female because you know they look different.
Right, plus the juveniles look different too.
Yes, exactly.
So how would you put that?
You would, the highest number that you see at any one time. So in that case, it would be 4, 2 adults, 2 juveniles, 4.
Okay.
If it were a red-headed woodpecker, for example, you can't tell the male from a female. And if a red-headed woodpecker comes to your feeder and then later another one comes and then later another one comes, you can only put 1 because 1 is the most that you saw at any given time.
But if it's a red belly, you can make out the male and female.
Exactly, you can tell them apart so you can distinguish. Yep.
Yeah, as well as their juveniles are easy to identify.
Exactly. If you can
so is there a place where I guess you can write in a comment that 2 of them were juveniles?
You can put that in a comment. Yes.
Or so they were molting or something?
Yeah, under the species, you would just click on the species details page and you would just write that in your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're gonna pick, I'm gonna pick you can pick whatever hotspot is closest to you for this exercise, or you can do a personal location if you wish, because that's really not too critical for this exercise. It's going to ask how many observers were in your group. In this case, it's just one. I'm going to talk about list sharing after a while. It'll automatically calculate how many minutes you've been birding. If you've been walking, it'll also count the number of miles that you have moved on the track that it is recorded. Now, the next thing it's going to ask you is this a complete checklist of the birds you were able to identify? So this has to do with a complete versus an incomplete list. So as a new birder, if you saw birds that you were not able to identify, you have not accounted for all of the birds that you saw. And so you would say no. You would answer no to this question. You have not accounted for all of the birds that you saw. If, on the other hand, you're in your yard and you're fairly confident of the birds that you see in your yard, you're able to put a name to all of them, and you could say, yes, this is a complete list. I have accounted for all of the birds that I saw. As a new birder, you may have more incomplete lists than complete, and that's okay. So while complete lists are more desirable because they have more accurate data, if you will, and they can be mined by the scientists for different applications, it still has value to you that you've reported all of the birds you were able to identify. So it is perfectly fine to say, no, I have not accounted for, or no, this is not a complete checklist. So again, perfectly fine. So it is going to, so it also fills in the duration, the number of people in your party. So if you were birding with somebody else, even if they were just casual, if they were looking for birds, if their eyes were out there looking for birds, and you want to include them in your count. And the reason for that is that, again, in the statistics, it knows that 2 observers, it changes the number of party hours that people have been birding. And it changes the way the statistics are calculated. So when you put in more than 1 observer, it's going to ask you who you want to share this checklist with. And if you click on that, it'll bring up the eBird IDs for other people that you've birded with before. If you haven't birded with somebody before, you may have to enter their eBird user ID here, but I'm just going to pick Catherine's because I know that I birded with her. And this is going to share the list with that other person. So the neat thing about this, a shared list, is that only one list has to be created. If Catherine and I go birding, I keep the eBird list. I share that with her at the end. She will get a copy of the list in her own database, in her own eBird database. Now, she can change that copy any way she wants. So if she looks at the final list and she says, I did not see those snow geese, I don't want them on my list, she can remove them from her list and it does not affect mine. Or she can say, I saw a barred owl that Jane didn't see. I can add a barred owl she can add a barred owl to her copy of the list and it doesn't change mine. So the value of this, if you have a large group that's out birding, rather than having multiple copies of the same list and make it look like there's 20 times as many birds as there really are, you have one list that's shared among all of the birders. So it's really slick the way that the eBird has done this. Comments, it's always advisable to put comments in your checklist. I usually put something about the weather, you know, that it was rainy, what temperature it was. You can also put the route that you walked. So if you're, you know, birding at the LSU lakes, you can put the streets, street names or anything like that. Basically what you want to do is think about the person that's looking at your list behind you and try to give them some information so they know what you did so that they could essentially copy it if they wanted to and find the same birds. So it's very helpful. Do note that you have to edit your profile to allow your comments to be public. By default, they are private and nobody will see them. So if you go to all the trouble to put the comments in there, you might as well make them public so that you can share them with other people. It took me several years to realize I was putting comments on every single eBird list that I did, and I did not realize that nobody else could see them. So it wasn't until after Christmas bird count when I put all this great information into my Christmas bird count list and the compiler said, "What are you talking about? I can't see your comments." And I realized I needed to allow them to be seen. All right. So we get to the end now. We have made this, or eBird has determined that this is a stationary type of a list. There are other types of lists that are available. Traveling would be if you're walking or driving, and then incidental. So traveling is pretty obvious. Stationary, if you are limited, you're moving less than 100 feet, you'd want to use a stationary list. Ideally, these should be between 5 minutes and an hour. If you bird for longer than that, you want to stop your list and start it over again. That is what eBird would prefer. Not everybody does that, but that is what eBird would prefer. And in that case, you think, well, I'm reporting the same birds over again. You are, but you're reporting them at a different time of day. And so they show up in the database as a unique sighting. An incidental list is a list that's used to record a sighting when you really weren't birding at the time. So say you're driving down the road and you see a swallowtail kite flying over and you want to make sure to make a note of the fact that you saw the swallowtail kite. You might do an incidental list, and the only thing on the list would be the swallowtail kite that you saw when you were driving. Now, obviously, you're not doing this while you're driving. You're asking your passenger to do this for you, or you are the passenger and you're not doing eBird lists while you're driving because you want to be safe. But that's how you would do it. Or you're out gardening, for example, and you happen to notice that there's a bald eagle flying over your house and you want to make sure that that bald eagle is on your yard list. So you can do a quick, just a one species incidental list to report that bald eagle. So there are also historical lists. If you are one that has been birding for a long time and you've got lots of lists on paper, you can put these lists in as well. So back to the complete versus incomplete and incidental. An incidental list is always incomplete because it doesn't contain the time of the effort. And it probably is incomplete because there undoubtedly were other birds around when you saw the one that you wanted to report and you just didn't bother to report them. So incidental is always going to be incomplete, which is fine. And as I said before, an incomplete checklist, again, is still valuable. Don't have any, don't be hesitant to create an incomplete checklist. There's value to you, and it still can be used for some scientific applications. I've talked about this already. When sharing eBird lists, so when I have bird classes, for example, and we go on a bird walk, I share the list with everybody in the class, and that way they don't have to keep their own lists. They'll have a copy of it and they can change it to their heart's content, and it doesn't modify anybody else's copy of the list. All right, we're at the end now. And what I want you to do is not click on submit. So normally what we would do is we would click on submit down here in the corner, but we are not going to do that today. Instead, up in the upper right-hand corner where it says hide, we're going to click on that. And that is going to hide the list. And now we're going to find it again. So down at the bottom, you see next to submit, it says checklist. We're going to click on that. And there are two tabs here, not submitted and submitted. So under not submitted, you should see the list that you just created. In my case, it's the one at the very top. So what you'll want to do is put your finger on that and slide it to the left. And the delete option will appear. And you click on delete and delete that list. It's going to warn you that this is going away. You say, okay, delete. And that way nobody reports a blackpoll warbler and gets me in trouble. Or 104 snow geese or whatever else silly.
Can you go over that again, please?
Yes. So when you finish, after you've hidden the list, I don't know where you want me to start, Teresa. Teresa, were you the one that asked me that question?
She did, but I'll ask it too. I'm on the page, it says submit. Where do you go from submit?
Let's see if I can find it.
Hide.
Okay, hang on just a second. I'm trying to get there. All right, you have submit down in the lower right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Up at the upper right, you have hide.
Yes.
So you want to click on that.
Gotcha.
Okay, and then your list, there you have my checklist. You have, so then you'd have to go to checklists.
Okay, and then delete. Okay, I got the warning now. Okay.
Yeah, you slide it to the left and then click on delete.
Okay.
You lost me there. I don't.
Okay.
I saw spot stop.
You click on hide.
You click on hide and your list disappears.
It says checklist in progress view.
Under my checklist?
Checklist in progress view. Okay.
What do you see up at the very top?
It goes back. Okay, hide. I'm going to hit hide. Then it says checklist in progress.
And then if you click on that, it comes up with stop.
Stop, yeah.
Oh, you have to stop first, yeah. You stop first, and that gives you the submit option. So when you finish birding, you click on stop. And let me, I think I can show you this. Hang on. So you finish birding, you click on stop. And it gets you to this page, which is the one where you're going to tell where you birded and if there were other people and put comments and all that stuff.
Well, mine takes me back to the start checklist. Then.
Okay, well, if you've gotten to the start checklist, then you're here?
Yes.
All right, now click on checklist at the bottom.
Okay.
This right here. And that should bring up this page, which says my checklist, and it says not submitted and submitted.
Yes.
All right, under not submitted, you should have the list you were just working on.
Right.
And that's the one that you then pull over to the left and delete.
Oh, and delete, I got you.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay. That is also, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but for those of you, if you ever bird somewhere where you don't have good cell service and you have to do an offline checklist, what you can do is hide your checklist, and then you go back later and you update it and complete it. So that's just an FYI for those of you that have a little more experience with eBird. All right, so we have completed and deleted. Excellent. So what if you make a mistake? What if you're doing this eBird list and you realize after the fact that you have made a mistake? They're going to kick you off eBird forever. No, they're not going to kick you off eBird. So there are built-in alerts to warn you when you've done something. That's what the flags are, okay? And if there's something that's really unusual, you'll usually get contacted by the eBird reviewer to ask you about something if they see something particularly odd. Again, remember that it's not personal. They're just trying to make sure that the data is as accurate as possible. So just answer the questions, you know, and if you're wrong, then you're wrong and you change it. If you're right, then you're right and you leave it. So it's as simple as that. But if you do figure out later that you made a mistake, you can always go back and fix it. And what you would do there is go, after you've submitted a list, it exists now on the website. And you would now go to the website. You would update your list to be more accurate. You can also change them on the phone for some period of time, but it's just easier to go to the website, log in there, call up your list and make the changes. I've done this, you know, when I first started birding, I didn't get everything right. And I realized later that I remember one specifically, what I had recorded as a great horned owl was actually a barred owl. Once I recognized and knew what the sound was, then I realized what I had put in was wrong. So I needed to go into that checklist and take out the great horned owl and put in barred owl. And it was some time later that I did that, and that's absolutely fine. And it wasn't flagged because in East Baton Rouge Parish, we have both great horned owls and barred owls. So it wasn't anything that the eBird reviewer would flag or would call me on because those are both expected species. So if you make a mistake, you just go back and fix it. So I mentioned Merlin. For those of you that are not familiar, Merlin is a great bird identification tool, especially for people who are new to birding. It can help you figure out what species you're actually looking at. It can use a series of questions, which is they call a wizard. If you have a photo, it can use a photo to help you figure out what bird that is. Or now they have sound ID. You can record the sound that the bird is making and it'll identify the bird by sound, which is very useful. So another one that I highly recommend.
I use BirdNet too for the sound.
Right, BirdNet came before they added the sound into Merlin. One thing that I do like about the Merlin version is that you can save those recordings and actually put them on your eBird lists.
Okay.
Export the sound clips that you've recorded and put them on eBird, which is a great way to add to the value of the eBird database. All right, we are to the point of questions. And I'm going to stop sharing here so that I can
Jane,
ask questions. Yes.
can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. On the bottom menu bar where it says explore, and if you go there, it says target species. What does that mean?
All
And
right.
it's because I'm up in near Monroe, I have the Ouachita Life List.
All right, so what it's doing here is, again, it's using your location.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's comparing all of the species that could be seen close to you with your particular database. Okay. And
Okay.
so, and it's going to, what you're seeing on your phone is going to be different than what I see on my phone. But in this particular case, it's going to say that 74 species have been seen in this, this 30-mile circle in the last 7 days. So if you look at the top, it should tell you that. It'll tell you the distance, the size of this circle, the date, the length of time, number of days, and the location. So since you're in North Louisiana, it's going to be different than mine.
So you could use it kind of as a list to start with. These are the things I'm going to be out looking for today.
Exactly. So
okay.
Yes. So this is something they added fairly recently in eBird. It used to be that all the explore functions were on the website. They've now taken some of those explore functions and put them on the phone. So if you are traveling, for example, so say I went to Monroe and I was birding up there, I would have a much higher target number in Monroe because I haven't birded up there very much. And so if I click on targets, it shows me the birds that have been seen around the area where I'm physically located, and show me that those are target species for me because I don't have those on my list.
Well, and looking at this list that it's showing me, almost every one that it's showing as a target is an uncommon, like a yellow circle, or a more uncommon, a red circle. So like, and could that mean that we just don't have that many people birding up here?
Most likely, yes. In my case, so if you look at my phone, one of them was a brown booby. That is truly an unusual, that's a rare bird that my son saw actually standing in front of his house.
Oh, wow.
Away from me. But if you click on that, it shows you where it was seen. And then you can click on the actual list and it'll show you the location where it was seen. So it really gives you a great tool if you're chasing particular birds. You can get very close to where those were seen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's a fun thing to use on the phone. It's really, really helpful when you're traveling. You know, if you've got target species, you can get all the latest data if there are birds that have been birding near where you are.
Amazing.
All right. Other questions? Looking, let's see. Cameron, the thing that drives me crazy. So Tamara was asking, she gets an error. There was an error submitting your checklist, which is pretty generic. But a 308 minute long list is too long. So that's probably, just as you surmise, is probably the problem. But that may be something that you would have to ask eBird specifically about. But generally,
I don't know how to ask. I got it down to 53 minutes and 11 miles.
See, they want the list to be less than 5 miles. And as Deborah pointed out earlier, if you change habitats. So if you are, for example, down in Cameron Parish and you are birding along Highway 82 and doing a beach list, for example, and then you go to Pavito Woods, you would stop your beach list and you would start another list for the woods because those are distinctly different habitats. So eBird likes shorter lists because those tend to be more accurate. People that bird all day long and try to cram everything into one list, they're probably going to reject because it's just not accurate enough to be valuable. You could
3 years ago when I didn't know any better.
So what you could do is put it as incidental, because if you put it as incidental, you don't have to put time or distance on it. And that way you should be able to submit it. It just doesn't have that information with it.
Okay, I'll try that right now.
All right.
Yes, Yes, it worked.
All right. All right, Linda asked how to record a bird I saw last year and want to add it to my life list. So again, if you know the date, you know the location, you can add it as a station, you know, it depends on what you want to do now. If you want to just record it for historical purposes, mainly for your purposes, then putting it in as an incidental sighting is probably the best thing to do. Because that's a bird you want to add to your life list. But if you may not have the other information about other birds that were present at the same time, or, you know, how far you walked to see it or any of that. Does that help, Linda?
Yes, it does. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
All right, Deborah, you asked, do you have time to show the profile maps, or is that too much? So you're talking about a particular bird map?
No, when you go to your own user profile on the web, and you can look, it shows you your maps of where you've birded.
Right. Oh, and I changed the region to everywhere. World.
If you go to without seeing it, I'm gonna have a hard time.
Okay, let me share my screen.
But it's under profile.
Let me share my screen again.
But it's where you see the chloropleth map. They color in each country, or you can zoom into the United States and it colors in each state you've birded in, and you can zoom into the parish level. You know, parish is about as far as it goes. And I'm trying to remember because they changed how you get there. Okay, so this is where the
here's my
okay, let's see.
Oh, it's under my profile. That's my profile.
Yeah, there.
That one.
And you can zoom out and you can click on each parish and see.
Right. So if I go out,
numbers and stuff.
Oh, it doesn't let me go out all the way to the rural almost. Let me say, you know.
Look, yeah, there's a zoom out button right below.
Yeah, I was trying to cheat and just put United States. So
you can still zoom out right below your 507.
Yeah,
count
this is
up there.
This is under my profile. It shows the map of the US and it shows all the places that I have birded. And you can kind of tell where I've spent most of my time birding by the fact that the Louisiana is the most red, but you can also see all the other places that I have birded. And then if you click on one, as Deborah said, you can see that in Ohio, I have seen 108 species. You can see where I birded in Ohio. This is at the festival, the birders, the biggest week in American birding in May in Ohio. These are the counties that you generally go birding along the shore of Lake Erie in the spring. And then for each of the parishes, you can zoom in and you can see all of the checklists that I have submitted for that particular parish. So that's kind of fun to see. All right.
Thanks.
Sure. It is fun to just explore everything that you can see in eBird. It would take forever to look at everything. All right, other questions? I think I got all the ones that were in the chat.
Now, you said that there was a way that you could look up somebody. Like I have a friend who lives in Ohio that's a big birder on eBird. Could I look her up and see what bird she's identified?
I don't know if you can search for a particular person. But if you know where she's been birding, like what county that she's been birding in, you could probably back into it. So for example, if I do explore, do you know what county she's in by chance?
No, I don't.
If I just put Ohio, we'll just use somebody as an example. If you can find out the county, that'll help narrow it down. Again, this shows all the Ohio birders, and it shows the recent visitor.
Oh, he lives in Doylestown. I don't know what county that is, but right. The name of the town is Doylestown.
Hang on just a second. Let me look it up. Wayne County. All right. Let me go back here, share my screen.
And the person has to have set something in their profile to be, for their stuff to be public, I think.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say. So you see here, these are all the Ohio birders, but some are in blue, which means you can click on them and get to their profile page. Others don't even have their name. They just are in there as anonymous, or they have the name, but it's black, meaning that you cannot click on it. But we'll try and see if we can find her. So what?
You put in Wayne County under Explore Regions. Yeah, because mine won't let me. It'll let me put in Wayne, but not county.
It's Wayne, Ohio, USA. It'll fill it out for you.
Oh, Wayne, comma.
Yeah, when you start typing Wayne, it'll give you a list.
There it is. Okay.
All right, and so let's look at recent visits. Does she bird regularly?
Yep, I see her name on here.
All right.
Yep.
What's her name?
She's number 55. She saw a chipping sparrow. Her name is Jennifer Allison.
All right. And she's in blue, so you can click on her and you can see her observations, basically.
I think I took that picture of her.
Cool. Oh,
we worked together up in Alaska.
Piece of a glacier, huh?
Yeah, it was a piece of a little teeny iceberg.
That's nice. So yes, you can see her checklists. You can see her photos. Yeah. So.
Wow. Yeah.
And you have control over this. So if you don't want people looking over your shoulder, you can turn all this off. It's entirely up to you. One thing that people cannot see is the track that you have walked when you've been birding. So you can see that when you look at your eBird checklist later, but other people cannot see that. So just, I think that's a safety measure that, that eBird has included. All right, well, we'll wrap this up. We've gone a little bit over, but it was a good, productive session, lots of good questions. So keep using eBird, and if you ever have questions, please ask me. There is, if you get really complicated questions, I may refer you to the eBird discussion page on Facebook. That's for questions, that's where I ask questions when I can't figure something out, and that's very helpful. So, all right, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane.
Good night.